The eye of the creature on the monster's chest sparkled. The creature puffed out its cheeks and spewed a stream of flame from its mouth. Chen Chu raised his sword and used destroying fire. The creature in the monster's chest was terrified. The protagonist quickly jumped up and slashed the opponent with the weapon. The system window notified that MC had killed the burning corpse of a level 5 demon and received 100 attribute points. The core element of thermonuclear fusion was discovered. Chen Chu can spend 10 attribute points to obtain it. The protagonist calmly slung the sword over his shoulder and agreed to receive it. The system window notified that MC's weapon, the heavenly sword, had been enhanced with demonic materials. It had been elevated to an extraordinary level. Chen Chu swung his sword, creating fiery lightning. He happily noted that he could combine the power of fire and lightning to create energy bolts from the sword. Sometime later, on the other side of the city, the protagonist, sitting among the leaves, looked at the monster. He wondered, a demon corpse mutated to look like a spider? The forest was so quiet that it looked ominous. First, he'll return. Sometime later, in the warehouse, Xiao said she would close the door for her elder brother. MC was greatly surprised and wondered, Xiao could close the formless door? This meant it had power over space and was more mysterious than he thought. It also worked when closed. At least the remaining demon corpses wouldn't crawl out while he was gone. The system window notifies that opportunity to improve the warehouse space has been detected. 10 attribute points equal 1 square meter. The protagonist must confirm if he wants to do this. MC instantly agreed. He picked up the sword and said that this was exactly what he needed. He was about to complain that carrying it everywhere was becoming inconvenient. And then, the program gave him space in the warehouse. MC took control of the gecko and thought that in just 3 hours, its body had grown 5 or 6 meters, and Chen Chu received more than 500 evolution points. The fish raised by humans tasted very good, as he expected. The guy shone a flashlight on the fish that surfaced from the ocean and turned to Shan Tianjun. He asked his comrade to look at it, and asked what happened to the tuna. Shan remarked that it was strange, because there was enough oxygen. The guy noticed blood near the tuna and yelled that something had happened to the fish. A huge iguana tail pierced the yacht, and the people flew up and screamed. Sometime later, at the villa, Chen Chu noticed he had over 100 attribute points left. He needed to increase something. The system window notified that the protagonist had used 40 points and increased his chi sense. 400 experience points were added. The protagonist had surpassed the intermediate level. MC had used 60 attribute points and increased his striking power. 600 experience points were added. Chen Chu had surpassed the lunar step. The protagonist closed his eyes and thought that his chi sense had increased from 100 meters to 500, and the lunar step allows him to remain in the air for a while. Sometime later, on the news, the anchor said that a strange black fog had appeared in the city. It covered hundreds of kilometers of the city and had already caused the disappearance of more than 50 people. MC tensed up and thought that it looked like a black tide in Tiger Mountain City. It seemed that peace in the world would no longer exist. Sometime later, at sea on Aodin Island, an assistant turned to Shan Benjin and inquired about the progress of Professor Kant's research. Benjin replied that the professor had obtained a special substance from the bodies of giant animals and even discovered a method for animal regeneration. The assistant exclaimed that this meant he could now create extraordinary people. Benjin smiled and noted that, what's more, they could control even the largest animals. After a while, Benjin turned to the professor and said that a miniature nuclear power plant had arrived. Kant clarified that she had almost reached her destination. They looked at the huge monster with a blade in its body. The lab worker exclaimed that the installation was complete. They connected to transfer the core energy. Kant, smiling, said that the core energy had transferred to the beast's body. The animal had recovered. It was smart enough to know that the metal collar would kill it. Now, it must follow instructions. The professor's assistant, Sugimoto, smiled and exclaimed that the professor was smarter than the scientist. The beast opened its mouth slightly, and Kant, with a mad grin, exclaimed that it worked. The beast will wake up soon. The protagonist in the iguana's body thought that these people were trying to resuscitate the giant animal. They must die. He quickly moved from his place. Kant looked at MC and yelled that there was another one. He ordered his assistants to stop it, otherwise everyone would die. We need to shoot it. Kant called out to Sugimoto and ordered them to go to the submarine. After a while, the guards fired machine guns. Smoke enveloped the protagonist's body. Sugimoto looked at MC with fear. Chen Chu leaned down and looked towards the smoke. The guard yelled worriedly that it was a 24mm armor-piercing shell and exploding bullets. A comrade added that these weapons are used in civil wars. The protagonist thought, this is all people are capable of. It spewed a stream of flame from its mouth towards the people. He noticed the professor boarding the submarine and wondered if they were running away. A powerful explosion thundered in the distance. The beast let out a loud scream. MC thought it was truly reanimated. What a terrifying aura. Chen Chu opened its mouth and spewed a stream of energy flame from it. The beast, enveloped in fire, screamed in pain and exclaimed that it had just woken up. It was not strong enough. The system window notifies the protagonist that they've found a corrupted ancient mind. Should they absorb it? MC thought it didn't matter. He'd do it. Meanwhile, in the cafe, the system window notifies them that the protagonist's clone has rested 5 evolution points have been added, and their power has increased by 0.5. MC, sitting on the couch, wondered if he could get stronger from resting after absorbing this corrupted mind. Xiao, happily eating a sandwich, exclaimed that it was delicious. A message arrived on the protagonist's phone. Situ wrote, "Is the protagonist free tomorrow? Maybe they could grab a bite together." Chen Chu agreed and wrote that he'd pick her up at 11. Sometime later, inside the teleportation door, the protagonist, dodging enemy attacks, thought that 3 swords could cut even a tank into rubble. The system window notifies them that they've killed the corpse of a level 4 demon and received 50 attribute points. Chen Chu let out a sigh of relief and said he thought the enemy was at least level 5. The protagonist sensed ultrasounds and thought he sensed them. The worm monster attacked him. MC thought it damaged his extraordinary defense. 50 attribute points to strengthen his armor. The monster rose and looked at the explosion. Chen Chu swiftly attacked the shield. He thought he created a wall of energy. The protagonist killed the corpse of a level 5 demon and gained 200 attribute points. MC confidently stood on the ground and used 100 points to improve his chi sense, 10 points to improve his scarlet flame. Chen Chu noticed that the temperature of his flame had increased from 3,000 degrees to 10,000. His attack range had also increased to 30 meters. He could even kill a dragonfly with a blow. The system window notified that the external aura had 6,200 experience points. Aura perception had 50 experience points. Protagonist, sitting on the couch, said that the external aura increases his power. He received explosive flame as a close-range strike, scarlet flame, long range, and also chi sense, various demonic, heavenly leap, and control of electricity and lightning. The next day, people are sitting on the roof of the building. They asked, "Isn't that the school beauty C2? It seems even she can't resist the urge. When did the atmosphere at Ning University become so bad?" C2, leaning against a car, asked, "What are they going to do? Everything will be for her." The protagonist suggested seafood. After some time in the restaurant, MC, looking at the menu, asked for 2 wild flower dragons and 4,000. C2 tensed up and thought that this was more than 70,000. She was only counting on 10,000. This is more than her payment for 3 months of accommodation and allowance. She raised her hand and said that she only took 10,000. Could the gentleman lend her some? C2 will pay it back later. Chen Chu replied that it was not necessary. He closed the account, so she should enjoy the food. Situ smiled and asked, "Did the gentleman open a seafood company?" She heard that the protagonist doesn't often go to school. It's probably because he's so busy with work. Businessmen have such an aura. MC replied that not really. He didn't go to school because he was killing monsters and leveling up. He didn't have time to manage the company. Situ leaned over and clarified, "Was this in the game?" She smiled and thought about what a huge crab it was. Chen Chu tensed up and looked away, thinking that if the apocalypse came, he didn't think he'd ever be able to enjoy such food. After a while, in an expensive shop, C2 sheepishly thought that he said that after eating, he would like to go shopping, but she didn't expect the protagonist to go there. 80,000 for food, after that another 23,000 spent on clothes. C2 won't be able to buy even his button with 2 months allowance. MC took her hand and offered to go buy clothes for her. C2 tensed and thought he grabbed her hand. Does he think it's easy with her? After some time, Chen Chu handed over the card and said he'll take it all. The seller smiled tensely and thought it was the protagonist. The girl he came with before was very nice, but he found someone even more beautiful in less than a month. Situ happily picked up the bag and thought that MC bought her $30,000 worth of clothes. And this was only their first meeting. Is this really what they call wasting money? Chen Chu isn't going to take her to the hotel. What should she do? At the same time, in the hall nearby, the demon looked at the people and they screamed in fear. Protagonist closed his eyes and felt it. He turned his head to the side and clarified that he needed to take care of urgent business. Now MC will send her back to school. Situ was surprised and thought, what does this mean? He has no intentions. Or does he want them to slowly get closer? She must be imagining things. Chen Chu tensed up and thought that a rupture in space occurred nearby. Something is definitely wrong. A little later in the hall, the protagonist thought this was the real world, but the poisonous aura still appeared. The monster irritably noticed that MC saw it. It jumped towards the protagonist with fury and yelled for MC to die. Chen Chu dealt a powerful blow to the monster. The system window notifies that the protagonist has killed a low-level poisoned monster and received 5 attribute points. MC thought that the enemy was simply poisoned, not demonic like that dark elf. After a while, the bureau captain crossed his arms and said that he wanted to use this poisoned monster to see if his hard work paid off. It turns out that someone killed it before him. The girl noted that it seemed to be a very powerful creature, controlling fire. When did someone capable of controlling fire appear in the city? At the same time, on the news, the anchor said that a large number of spatial rifts appeared today in their world. Unfortunately, it looks like the apocalypse is coming. MC noted that this means the apocalypse of 1999 is coming. Over the past 20 years, more than 500 cities have perished on the battlefield. They paid with their own blood for 20 years of peace. They have entered an era belonging to ordinary people. any person can become special. Chen Chu looked at the phone and thought that he sent this to his grandfather, but it was still not enough. The protagonist must report to the city's special department if he wants more information. In his subconscious, a huge monster attacked the iguana. MC thought that it could make heavy water from seawater, and yet it was useless. He emitted a stream of mana and pierced the monster's head. The protagonist thought that once he ate this giant whale, he would receive at least 10,000 evolution points. Sometime later, in the recreation area of the city's special administration building, a student looking at his phone said that whoever killed that poisoned monster yesterday was good, better than any of them. Hao, lying on the couch, agreed and added that it must be an ordinary awakened citizen. Sichu wondered if it could be him. Even now, she doesn't think she could do what the protagonist did that day. The captain opened the door and said that someone registered an evolved human during the day. Do they want to see it? The students resolutely raised their hands and agreed. After a while, MC confidently clenched his fists. The girl pointed at him and exclaimed that it was the guy who drove up to the school in a really nice car. Sichu exclaimed embarrassedly that it was him. The captain tensed up and thought it was MC. He put his hand on the pole and said that registering the evolution means Chen Chu will pass the test. It will determine the protagonist's strength and speed. MC replied that it was no problem. The captain clarified that they use this. It can reflect up to 15,000 kilograms of force. He asked Chen Chu to hit with all his might when he said so. Hao asked Zhongwen how strong he thought the protagonist was. How many stars? Zhongwen replied that MC killed a poisoned monster last night, so he was definitely stronger than them. Maybe 3 stars? Hao said that this meant he had 5,000 kilograms of force in one blow. Zhongwen noted that the protagonist seemed quite confident in passing the test. Lin asked, "What's so strange? Their captain had evolved to 5 stars and he only had 10,000. Loud explosion immediately followed. The scoreboard showed the result, 12,186 kilograms. The students shouted that the MC really did have 5 stars, even more. Chen Chu thought he had hit too hard. The captain sternly announced that the protagonist had reached the 5-star standard. The MC could earn 50,000 yuan from the city's special administration every month. If Chen Chu wanted to join them, he would earn much more. They would promote the protagonist to vice chief, and the MC would receive a title. Does that sound good? Chen Chu disagreed and thanked him. He clarified that he always played alone. The captain asked if the MC had killed the poisoned monster yesterday. Chen Chu calmly confirmed it. The captain inquired if the protagonist still had the fire ability. MC has great strength, like the awakened ones he saw recently. With Chen Chu's talent, he could be taken as a disciple by the god of fighting, Jian, if the protagonist joins the management. MC thought that people also saw this as the end of possibilities. No, his huge lizard must remain a secret, and he has other ways to become stronger. Chen Chu raised his hand and, disagreeing, replied that he appreciated the captain's proposal. After a while, a notification from the Special Department of City N arrived on his phone. The message said that they congratulated the first registered evolved person in City N, Chen Chu, a 21-year-old man with 5 evolution stars, extraordinary strength, and bloody fire. The comment said that other places have a maximum of 3 stars, and City N is the best. This is the male god Chen Chu from their school. Tianrui put the phone to his ear and asked, "Is it really true that the protagonist has evolved to 5 stars and is in first place?" He asked MC to take care of him. At the same time, Chen Chu, sitting on the couch, agreed with him and laughed. The protagonist placed the phone on the table and thought that, so this is what it's like to be a god among humans? After eating the giant whale, the lizard had grown 90 meters long. His strength had grown to 1,800 points. MC's physical strength had also increased from 29 to 70 tons. Chen Chu smiled and exclaimed that with his coating, he could even withstand an armor-piercing shell. Compared to other evolved beings, he was at least level 7 or 8. 7 stars should be the highest level an awakened being can reach, and there was still a noticeable gap between these 10th level battle gods. The protagonist sent streams of lightning from his hand and thought that in a peaceful world, even if his strength grew every day, without a worthy opponent, he would have a constant feeling of emptiness. But now, things are different. The apocalypse has arrived, and terrifying monsters have crossed space and time, landing in their world. Now, countless powerful awakened, evolved, and war gods will find themselves on the same field, and the stakes are rising. MC will finally be able to stand alongside these gods. No, he will suppress them. Chen Chu will become an even more powerful being. A message arrived on the protagonist's phone, and he paid attention to it. Secretary Ling Yu wrote that the boss had evolved. Everyone started congratulating MC on evolving. Chen Chu wrote that they would achieve the same someday. He was just a few days ahead of everyone. Little Carnation wrote that she wants to awaken like her boss. It would be very nice to awaken as an angel, so that she could grow beautiful wings. Ling Yu wrote that it is not the protagonist who decides who to awaken into. A person can also become an animal. MC laughed calmly. He wrote that they should not slack off at work. All the workers wrote that they agreed. Sometime later, in the warehouse, Chen Chu confidently clutched the sword in his hand. He calmly noted that they had returned. Xiao said that she had opened the door. The protagonist asked her to wait here and not move, as he would look. Xiao hid behind the door and agreed with him. MC walked through the door. He brought his fist to his mouth, smelling something and noticing something was wrong. Chen-Chu looked at the lava-shrouded space and wondered if the door led them to a new location every time they opened it. If they wanted to check the world on the other side, she should keep the door open. MC turned his head to the side and said that even if that were the case, what if an even more terrible monster learned of the door's existence? Chen-Chu scratched his cheek and thought that the enemy who was chasing him could have learned of the door's location from the place from which he disappeared. The enemy could have sent a monster after him. As soon as the door closes, a new location appears behind it, and he needs to explore it again. Is this a completely randomly generated world? The protagonist confidently noted that this was also not bad. After some time, the system window notified that extremely high temperatures kill most living beings in seconds. His scarlet flames are capable of causing combustion at high temperatures. MC raised his hand and said that this was very pitiful. A warm breeze would even relax him. The system window notified that the protagonist's body was being affected by poisonous substances. The body blocks the effect of the poisonous substance using temperature. MC's invulnerability will last 15 hours. Chen-Chu said that no matter how strong his body was, it seemed it could not fully withstand the effects of this poison. The protagonist thought he could imagine how those awakened and war gods would remain untouched. They were simply amazingly strong. There was no time to waste. He would see what was in this world. MC closed his eyes and used his ability. Chen-Chu opened his eyes slightly and said that there was not a single sign of life or even a monster. Completely empty. It's no wonder. Life couldn't have originated in such hell. Then he asked Xiao to open another door. Chen-Chu, with a terrifying gaze, quickly turned his head to the side. He instantly cut down the monster. The system window notified that it was a level 3 poisonous smoke monster. The protagonist smirked and thought that he hadn't even noticed it. There's something in this world after all. The monster, smiling, quickly raised its fist with the intention of attacking. It hit the shield in front of MC in surprise. Chen-Chu thought that it wasn't just his feelings. It was completely inanimate. The protagonist confidently raised his hand and said that since it was a terrible monster, he should use thunder, which repels evil spirits, to destroy it. MC shouted with determination that evil must be destroyed. Blue mana enveloped the protagonist's hand. MC created an electric arrow. He threw it towards the enemy with tremendous force. The arrow instantly pierced the monster's body. The system window notified that Chen-Chu had killed a level 3 monster and received 20 attribute points. The skull bounced off the boulders and fell to the ground. The protagonist asked in surprise, "A level 3 monster? He couldn't do anything about it now. Besides, the enemy was made of lava, so fire attacks were useless." MC smiled, enveloped his hand in lightning, and said he was just lucky to have electricity. If it weren't for him, the battle would have been much more difficult. The protagonist noticed Xiao's legs. MC quickly turned his head to the side and exclaimed that he had asked her to wait outside the door because it was dangerous here. Xiao responded fearfully, saying she was worried. Chen-Chu thought there might be danger behind the door too. He patted her head and asked her to stay away from him. Xiao should not come any closer under any circumstances. Xiao instantly disappeared. After a while, MC noticed sound waves coming from afar. He swiftly leaps across the rocks and lava. The protagonist bounced off the rock and flew forward. After a while, MC landed on a boulder. He noticed a glowing inscription on the stone. Chen-Chu smiled and clarified that it could be called a structure, but it looked more like a confined space or a prison. The aura of a huge monster could be hidden inside. After some time, the dragon, Vandenfeld, Wings of Fire, lies on the ground. The protagonist said that it turns out that the real treasure hidden in this world was a real dragon. He doesn't even want to think about what stats the dragon has. Vandenfeld raised his head and said that foolish people summon him without thinking about their own lives. He sat up and noted that this is his world. The dragon turned to the intruder and clarified that since the protagonist is in front of him, he will be merciful and give him 2 options. First, Vandenfeld will bury MC here. Of course, there won't even be ashes left for the funeral. Second, he will gladly accept a new servant, as long as MC recognizes his strength. Vandenfeld. Chen-Chu smirked and replied that nothing can be done, but he needs the dragon's bones. Vandenfeld raised his paws in rage. Many monsters crawled out of the lava. The protagonist noticed them and said he thought the poisoned monsters were surprising. How stupid of him. MC decisively asked, who agreed to become the dragon's servants and turned into these monsters. Vandenfeld ordered the monsters to kill MC and throw his corpse into the lava river. The monsters leaped toward the protagonist with the intention of attacking. Chen-Chu froze, noticing them. He moved with lightning speed, leaving behind a stream of lightning. The protagonist quickly attacked the enemies. The monsters exploded, leaving bright flashes in the sky. Vandenfeld asked, "What's wrong? Have his servants really disappeared?" Chen-Chu confidently said that now he thought the black dragon was an interesting pet. The protagonist turned his head to the side and asked, "How about becoming his servant instead?" The dragon screamed, "Idiot!" Fiery attacks aimed at the protagonist. He adjusted his grip on the sword using zoom and fusion. He then swung his sword and, looking at the dragon, kicked off the ground before charging, wounding the dragon's neck. In response, the demon screamed that it would send him to hell. He concentrated fire in his mouth and then screamed, "Dragon's hellfire!" He opened his mouth, releasing a fiery attack. The protagonist used a body of scarlet fire, a barrier forming around him, protecting him from the flames. He asked, "Is that all?" The dragon repeated the fiery attack again and screamed for him to burn to ashes by the lava. No one in this world could withstand even a second of his hellfire. MC, emerging from the resulting smoke, adjusted his hair and said, "He really thought for a second that he was that strong, and it looks like he's just an overgrown hairdryer." The dragon thought, "What?" The next second, it began to open its mouth to attack, but the protagonist pushed off the ground and flew upward, attacking the dragon's head, but the dragon still unleashed a fiery attack. The protagonist landed nearby and said he possessed extraordinary control over flames and the strength of the monster emperor's arm. This was the best defense against flames. He could simply ignore its heat. The dragon said he was immune to its fire. He sighed, then added, "That's interesting." Then he pointed his head at it and shouted, "See if you can withstand a blow from its teeth." With these words, it opened its mouth wide, bearing sharp fangs and trying to grab the protagonist. But he pushed off the ground and, flipping in midair, jumped onto the dragon's neck, then thrust his sword in and ran forward, stabbing it along the length of his path. After that, he swung his sword again and, landing on the ground nearby, said, "No wonder they call it fiery wings. It can change color to red." The next second, the silhouette of a dragon appeared behind him, and it said, "Resistance is futile. Its moves are known." He learned one small move from it, bloody explosion. At that moment, his body was covered in fiery patterns, and the dragon shouted, "How dare he steal his moves? He must die." The next second, MC swung his sword and then decapitated the dragon. The system reported that he had killed level 5 demon dragon and received 1,000 attribute points. He said, "Game over, trash." At that moment, Xiaoxi appeared and, crouching on the rocks near the dragon's head, said, "Chu strong, fire dragon is dead." The protagonist spread his arms and said, "So this is the effect of his 4,000 attribute points in physical strength." He was frighteningly strong, but he'd only used 10% of his chi, and naturally, recovery could cover it. He'd call this form a Type 1 bloodburst. He then walked over to the severed head and thought, the dragon's size, the teeth, the flesh, even this lava-like blood, these were unusual materials. This head alone would be worth at least 100 million. There was just one problem. How could he explain where he got the head of a level 5 dragon? If he said he killed it single-handedly, it might give away his strength as being level 6 or even 7. He then extended his hands to Xiaoxi and told her to come down. He thought he'd keep it. Who knows? Maybe it tasted good. The system reported that he'd exchanged 200 attribute points to purchase a vault. The next second, he directed electrical energy at the severed head and saved it. He looked at his hand and thought, 4,000 attribute points to enhance his intuition. He should be able to see between the lines. The system reported, his intuition has been successfully enhanced. He has gained high-level intuition. Monsters' auras cannot be hidden from him. Inanimate objects can also be detected. He thought, 4,000 attribute points to enhance his armor's intimidation. The system reported, his armor's intimidation has been successfully enhanced. He looked at his body, from which the energy emanated, and thought, has he awakened the royal intimidation? It is said that it can make a person tremble with fear, and even the slightest glance can render a person helpless. Then the energy disappeared, and he said, it might be useful for harvesting fish. Meanwhile, the fishing boat of Country R. The fishermen shouted joyfully, there's a bite, we need to pull. He pulled the net with the caught fish onto the shore. One of them said, so strange, why so few? The man folded his arms across his chest and asked, what difference does it make? Alive. Thanks for that. Then, one of the fishermen pointed forward and told them to look at what it was. A bulge appeared in the water, and then it was covered in lightning. The next second, lightning struck that spot, and the fish in the water began to fall from the sky. The fisherman joyfully raised his hands and shouted, fish, so many fish. He had never seen so many fish in his life. At that moment, the dragon closed its mouth, deep in the sea. MC thought, the royal intimidation made the iguana's suppression even stronger. Nothing can move surrounded by this. And then he concentrated energy in his legs and said, he can fly when using fire and electricity at the same time. He thought, people have always strived for the heavens. As long as he combines the power of fire and electricity, he can be free from gravity. With these thoughts, he pushed off the ground and flew swiftly into the sky. As he approached the city, he thought his intuition was telling him that this was an unexplored part of this world, a creature that even the dragon that ruled this world hadn't known about. Incidentally, Firewings was just a magical dragon trapped here. There had to be something more powerful trying to hold him back. He had to go there and see what was there. After some time, he landed in the ruins of a giant kingdom. Walking up the stairs, he saw a wall with drawings and, stretching out his hand, said, this was a civilization of giant dragons. What did they worship? He wondered. A dragon god? A real god? Then he looked at the huge door and thought, "It feels like there's a giant danger here, but if you're afraid of wolves, don't go into the forest." The next second, he ran forward past the statues. Stopping near a dragon statue, he looked at it and said, "I see. Firewings was their little brother." The next second, the system reported that the poisoning in this area had intensified. He is immune to poisoning due to his great strength. After 3 hours, his strength will weaken, and he will be affected by the poison. He noticed that he was right. There was something strange in this temple. It hadn't revealed its essence yet, but it could already cause this kind of poisoning. Then he shouted, "It must stop hiding. He knows it's here." The next second, a powerful surge of energy descended upon him, and the protagonist abruptly stepped back. A four-armed demon stood before him. The monster then pointed its hand at him and said, "Eternity." The protagonist was horrified, then held his sword in front of him, dispelling the enemy's attack. He wondered if this exalted could be level 6. No, he must be a level 7 demon. Then, the demon told him to bow down and surrender. The ground beneath the protagonist's feet cracked. He asked, "Does it want him to kneel? He wanted to die?" Then he threw his head back and screamed loudly, enveloping his body in a powerful aura. The next second, his body transformed again, and he declared that he would die for this. The demon looked at him and said, "Blood explosion, first form." He aimed sharp shards of stone straight at the protagonist, who, swinging his sword, cut them into small pieces. The next second, he swung his sword again, severing a part of the demon. But then the creature appeared behind him and placed its fingers on the back of his head. He called it "disgusting ant." The next second, a powerful explosion erupted at the site of the battle, and clouds of smoke filled the area. The demon looked forward in surprise, and MC, covered in flames, shouted that he would end this. The demon began concentrating energy in his hands, and then aimed huge stones at the protagonist. He easily cut them apart, and then swiftly flew forward, delivering another slash. It slashed the demon's body and several stone columns standing nearby. After that, he plunged his sword into the demon's chest and said, "Blood explosion, second form." In response, the creature grabbed his arm and said, "Arrogant." Then another explosion occurred, and the protagonist's sword flew into the ground. Emerging from the smoke, he said that his weapon would only slow his attacks. He would deal with him with his own hands. He must approach him. With these words, he swung his fist and charged. But the demon, spreading all 4 of its arms, formed a barrier around itself, defending itself from the protagonist's attack. The protagonist then flew back, and the demon was also sent flying in the opposite direction from the powerful attack, his face covered in cracks. The next second, MC appeared next to him with lightning speed, then grabbed his face with his hand and with a sharp movement slammed his head into the ground, covering it with cracks. Smoke rose again from the battlefield, and the next second, the demon rose into the air and, gesturing with his fingers, said, "Trap." The protagonist spun around, and then the ground beneath his feet began to split, chains appearing from various places, wrapping themselves around his body. The system reported that the formation sealing the dragon can collect the energy of a sealed object and use it to strengthen itself. The demon said that the harder he tries, the harder it will be for him to escape the net. The main character looked at him and said, "So that's how he caught those ancient dragons." He tried to move his hand and added, "It's a shame he's not good enough to seal it, because he's not like those stupid dragons." The next second, the chains broke. He clenched his fists, and then said, "He must listen. His name is Chen Chu." The demon looked at him in surprise, and then the ground under the protagonist's feet cracked again. He took a few steps forward, while the demon looked ahead in surprise. After that, the protagonist swung his fist and, clenching his teeth, ran to attack, after which he delivered a powerful blow, knocking the creature back. Then he flew closer, and, swinging his fist, delivered another blow. He struck again and again, cutting the demon into several pieces. Its body continued to be covered with cracks. The next second, MC added a strike from above, pinning the demon to the ground. He looked at the gaping hole in the creature's body, and then, smirking, said, "He needs its power." With these words, he pulled the heart out of the demon's body. A system window appeared in front of him, stating, "Notification. The scarlet flame rose to a glassy scarlet flame. Notification. The lightning rose to a thunderstorm. Notification. He had received a dragon sealing talisman, allowing him to capture creatures below level 6. He overexerted himself, and his strange poison level rose to 99%. At that moment, Xiaoxi ran up to him and said, "Chu, the poisoning is dangerous." He looked at her and said, "He's been fighting for too long, so the poisoning has worsened. He can't stay here any longer. Without the protection of the sublime, the world of dragons and giants will fall apart." Moments later, there was a small explosion. Xiaoxi, holding her hands out in front of her, ran to the door. The protagonist lay on the rubble. She turned to him and said, "The door is closed." A trickle of blood escaped his mouth, and he said, "As soon as the door closes, the connection with the other world is lost. Who knows where it will open next?" Xiaoxi ran up to him and sat down next to him, extending her hand. She called out to him, and he placed his hand on her head and said he was fine. That was the price one had to pay for strength. He thought, although the blood explosion only seemed like an explosion of pure energy, only someone insanely strong could withstand it. If a normal person used even the first type, their blood would evaporate in an instant, leaving only a desiccated body. If he wanted to reach the third type, he would need to increase his physical strength. With these thoughts in mind, he rose to his feet. Then he took Xiaoxi's hand and said, since the teleportation door had closed, they needed to rest. Meanwhile, in the ruins of a palace in the land of giants, a demon, his body covered in cracks, lay on the ground, and the next second began to rise to his feet. He looked at his bloody hand, then spread his arms out to the sides. At that moment, Seth transmitted over the intercom, at 35 degrees north, 1200 kilometers from here, a group of poisoned level 5 monsters. He's requesting artillery support. At that moment, several demons burst from the ground, bearing sharp fangs. This was happening somewhere in the city. Missiles were flying straight at the monsters. Seth, holding the microphone in his hand, said, 6 minutes left until the second wave of shots. He hoped this bunch of monsters wouldn't escape. Tyler looked ahead and said, he should relax. They're eating their own corpses and haven't moved from their spot. He replied that he wanted to know their poison percentage. Then he looked at Mark and called him over. He was looking at the system window and said, 15.5. They need to hold out for another 8 hours. Seth said, that will be enough to drag everything back. Tyler flexed his hand and said, the bodies of 7 level 5 monsters will cost a pretty penny. Even if they're wounded, they're worth a lot. Mark added that they'll need the money to increase their range. If there are 3 of them left, he'll be happy. Seth said, as they say in Country Z, he could consider himself lucky. If they hadn't needed the base's help, any one of these monsters at full health would have covered their needs. Then he smiled and added, it's time to get down to business. They have to give him this monster. Tyler, Mark, they have to get these bodies out of the way. Then he moved on and added that there should be enough for 5 vials of purifying energy. They'll take 3 and sell the rest. 1 vial is worth 200 million on the black market. They'll live like kings for a while. The next second, a demon with several tentacles on its back appeared from the smoke. Seth looked at him and asked in surprise, what is this? Mark, looking at the system window in surprise, shouted, poison level 19, 38, 97, 175, 297, 5 of 31. Why? Before he could finish speaking, a demon tentacle severed his head. Seth, turning around, shouted in fear, they have to run. He ran forward, repeating, they have to run. Behind him, the tentacles of a huge demon attacked Tyler, and then the demon attacked him too. Somewhere in the apocalypse base in Country M, voices were heard, he reports. The apocalypse has occurred, activating the highest level of apocalypse defense, beginning the elimination of all threats to the good of humanity. After some time, MC woke up in his bed, he stretched his arms forward, and after a while he knocked on the door and said, it's time for breakfast, Xiaoxi. She left the room, rubbing her sleepy eyes, and then told him to hug her. He sighed, then squatted down to hug her. He asked, what should he do with her? Then he heard the doorbell ring, and Huang Fujian was standing at his door, holding a delivery bag. On her back was the inscription, quick takeaway to satisfy his hunger. She said, Mr. Chen, delivery. He opened the door, holding Xiaoxi in his arms. She handed him the bag and said hello. He looked at her bike and said that it was the first time he'd seen a delivery girl so early, and on a $100,000 motorcycle no less. She leaned over and said that she too had never seen anyone living in an expensive residence ordering delivery every day, especially with a child. He said, lady, she knows him too well. After that, he used his energy, and she dropped the bag from her hands and frightened, said, no, he's from City N, the first evolved human of the new generation, Chen Chu. She blushed with embarrassment and added, she finally saw him with her own eyes. Finally, he thought, this girl. Then he noticed that this was strange. What was she getting at? She, unzipping her suit, breathing heavily, said, well, of course, she's here to stalk him. He asked, she added he should remember her name. Huang Fujian. She lives next door. Well, they'll see each other after the next order. She got on the motorcycle and rode on, shouting at him not to forget to leave a good review. He remained silent and then wondered if he had somehow opened the door incorrectly today. At that moment, Tianri approached him and said, good morning. The protagonist, looking at him, asked, brother, what's he doing here? He smiled and replied, well, just decided to stop by. He wanted to tell him that he'd moved into building 87, right next door. He just bought a villa yesterday and moved in today. He'd chosen this area specifically. If any danger were to arise, it would be close to his house, making it easier for him to ask for help. The protagonist thought he'd expected that displaying his abilities and talent in public would attract the attention of many. But who would have thought that the first to come to him would be someone completely unfamiliar with City N, but such a small fry? Then he smiled awkwardly, scratched the back of his head, and said he was overextending himself. City N had a special investigation bureau. If the poisoning had spread, they would have rushed here as soon as possible. Tianrui extended his hand and asked how they could compare to him. He wasn't from the department, so he didn't have to be responsible for anyone. Then he pointed a finger at him and added, that's why you need to know whose side you're on. The protagonist asked, What was he talking about? He replied that since he still didn't know, after the news he had spread yesterday, most of the houses in the wilderness near that mountain had changed owners. He's so prominent that the price in the entire area has more than tripled, and all the rich people in City N are fighting to move here. They say they want his help, but all they want is his resources. Connections, money, whatever he wants. They won't refuse him until the monsters show up. He should help them too. MC said thoughtfully. Resources. Tianri shrugged and said, they're all businessmen. They want to invite him to dinner, so he's here. The protagonist replied, of course he'll go. He patted his hand, smiled, and said, great. He better keep his word. They'll see each other a little later, at Linchu's best hotel. Yes, he just saw Huang Fujian. Does he know her? The protagonist replied that it wasn't so. She showed up unexpectedly and said she wanted to pursue him. He thought for a moment and then said, she might be a bit overbearing, but she's had everything she wanted since she was young. Since she likes him, he better be careful. Behind her is Huang Futai, the richest man in City N. A notification came through on the phone. Breaking news about sending peace. Country Z used the most powerful equipment, reducing the poisoning level. Public order was restored. According to the news, the village of Wu was attacked by poison monsters. Hundreds were killed. A temple in Country R was poisoned by the body of a woman who was burned alive by monks and reincarnated as a vengeful monster. 20 people were killed. Country Z announced its plans to eliminate the apocalypse 20 years ago and created the first superior resource protection and storage system. This system made the city the safest in the world. Pressure is mounting worldwide. The rich have rushed to Country Z, and many possessed are now at the border. The black market is overflowing with disaster relief contracts. Meanwhile, Ningchen University, Qianqian, sitting at her desk, flipped through her textbook and listening to music. Her classmate turned to her and asked, if the apocalypse has arrived, why is she still wasting so much energy on studying? She put her hands behind her head and, leaning back in her chair, added that she'd thought about working for an international company or becoming a translator after graduation. But the situation is so dire that it's no longer an issue for her. Who knows if people will survive? She still needs to find a high-ranking man and marry him. Then Qian took off her headphones and thought, Chen Chu, who awakened with 5 stars, has extraordinary powers of fire control. He's very popular online, even more famous than some celebrities. The number of discussions about him online reaches 2,000 blocks. But besides fans, there are also doubters. Then the girl added, seriously, what's going on between her and that ordinary guy? She smiled and asked, are they sleeping together yet? Qian, blushing with embarrassment, asked what she was talking about. She covered her face with her hand and thought, domineering, talented, and handsome. He is so perfect that no one can compare to him. Chen Chu is her boyfriend at Ning University, but does she feel anything for him? At that moment, she received a call from the protagonist on her phone, and still blushing, she said she would go away. Her friends smiled and told her to go. She went out into the hallway and, answering the call, asked if he was looking for her. The protagonist, putting on his jacket, asked if she had time tonight. He made a lunch reservation. She said, of course. He said, okay. Meanwhile, Wangfu Villa. Tai asked if she had seen him. His daughter threw a helmet on the sofa and confirmed it. He asked how he was. She adjusted her hair, tying it into a ponytail, and said that he knows she is watching him and becomes scary when he concentrates on something. It seems that he is capable of being a king. Her father, pouring tea into a cup, laughed and said that her old father's guess was probably true. He is strong. She added that if he wants to buy it for tens of millions, he will not succeed. He said that no matter how it seems to her, Chen Chu is just a brat in his 20s. She thinks that he can fool an old man with such business experience as his. She placed her hands on the table in front of him and said that the world has changed. Father, his money may not always be the solution, but strength always is. He said that she had only been there once. She should not tell him that she likes him. She folded her arms across her chest and added that she was not chasing him for his sake or because she wanted to get something from him. He was surprised, and she explained that she simply liked him. He asked in surprise, are you serious? She covered her mouth and said, of course. He was the first man who had made her feel anything in years. Then the father slammed his hand on the table and said, all the high-ranking families from City N and even from Cities X and C have set their sights on her. He knew exactly how they manipulate others. Money, women, power. As long as he had human desires and emotions, he could exploit them. They simply wanted to pressure him, to force him to bow before them and join their ranks. Daughter, she was too naive to fight them. She placed her hands on her waist and said, my aunt said that the way to a man's heart is through his stomach. The father remarked that this was true. She should wait. Did she want to learn to cook? He folded his arms across his chest and thought, his daughter, as we know, is a little out of her mind. Now she's fallen in love with a man and has even decided to change for him. Besides, she's really pretty, so she really can win him over. Then she said thoughtfully, she gave up cooking when she almost burned down the old house several times. That won't happen again. He asked, then what is she going to do? She showed the writing on her jacket and said that she will deliver food to him and only him. She used his last name to start a delivery company. Father desperately said, money for a food delivery business. She smiled and said that small space he used to rent, a warehouse on the docks, or even this villa, He always orders food for himself, even breakfast. She found someone who took his phone and installed an app. As long as he orders, she will be able to deliver food to him. Then her father clutched his chest and coughing said, "Delivery, food. What is she doing?" She smiled and said contentedly, "Soon he will be touched by her sincerity." Sometime later, MC was sitting behind the wheel of the car. One of the people present shouted, "That's Director Chen's car." "It really is." The girl looked at Qian walking toward the car and said, "I wish you gave her a ride." Then the protagonist looked at her and told her to get in. She walked up to the car and, smiling, said, "Of course." Zhongwen looked at the car and said, "They're trash compared to them." Pan Hao looked at him and said, "Headmaster, he lets other people's ambitions ruin his own, meaning they've all evolved, so he's confident they'll catch up. He just happened to break past 5 stars first." He then spread his arms wide and added, "Judging by what the department head said, the 3 of them are the best of the best, selected from among 1,000,000 people in City N. An outsider like Chen Chu was just lucky." He then looked at Peng Lin and asked, "Is he right?" He replied that it was true. They were just as talented as he was, absolutely the same. He blushed with embarrassment and said, "This girl is very pretty." Pan Hao hit him on the head and shouted at him to stay focused. Gritting his teeth, he added, "As long as Chen Chu acts arrogant, the girls will only look at him. The most important thing now is to become stronger." He replied, "He means they shouldn't tell Rin Roya what they just saw. Chen Chu was with someone else right now." Pan Hao put his hand on his shoulder and said that he knew he liked Roya, but she liked Chu. He could fight fairly. Even if he didn't win, he would at least be a real man. But talking about people behind their backs is not heroic. Meanwhile, Qian, turning to the protagonist, said, "In 2 weeks, there will be a second apocalypse. If there are a lot of monsters and the Special Missions Bureau can't handle them, will he do anything?" The MC turned his gaze to her and asked why she was suddenly asking. She lowered her head and replied, "There are a lot of people criticizing him online, calling him a coward." He asked why? "Because he didn't join the Special Tasks Bureau?" She replied, "Most likely. They say he didn't join because he's afraid of facing the monsters that will appear in 2 weeks. He said he's the first evolved student in this country. Of course, there are those who won't like him. The crown of glory is truly heavy." She looked at him and said, "If monsters powerful enough to upend the world appear, and the Special Tasks Bureau can't handle it, will he?" He replied that he would undoubtedly be on the front lines. He didn't join the Bureau because he didn't want bureaucratic red tape to hamper him. Reporting before every action doesn't suit him. She blushed with embarrassment and looking at him thought, yes, someone she likes can't be a coward. Sometime later, in a magnificent hotel, the protagonist walking into the room wished everyone present a good day and introduced himself. Qian, looking at the people present, thought they were billionaires from the richest companies. Then Li Chenghong said that he was glad to finally meet them. Mr. Chen. It seemed his useless son had kept him updated on the situation. MC replied that he knew what they were talking about, so they would get straight to the point. Chenghong said that to ensure their safety during the impending apocalypse, they decided to form a security council and invite him to become its chairman. The protagonist was surprised. A security council? He smiled, spread his arms wide, and said, "Of course, he will protect them, the old people, and ensure the safety of the villas around the hill from poisoned monsters. And since they are protected, naturally, they will pay a reward of 100 million per month." Qian was surprised and thought, "What? 100 million per month?" Then the MC said, 100 million sounds pretty good. But that would be the price for protecting all the billionaires in these villas, like the tax for joining the Security Council. He's sure they won't be able to raise that amount with the more than 30 billionaires living here. If they split it up, each family would pay 1 million. He doesn't even know how much they'll charge them for joining. 10 million? 100? It doesn't matter. It looks like a profitable business. Tai folded his arms and asked, "Is he saying there's not enough money?" The protagonist spread his arms out to the sides and replied, "In times of peace, they, the rich, stick together. Even if something goes wrong, they solve it with money, and that's why they act arrogant. And now the apocalypse has knocked them off their thrones in an instant. Everyone is equal before poisoned monsters. There's no difference between a prince and a pauper, and that makes them, who earn millions their entire lives, very unhappy. As for him, he understands them perfectly." Chenghong smiled, raised 2 fingers, and said they were only doing this because a rift had occurred in space a few days ago. The Bureau had to use nuclear weapons to drive away the monsters. Mr. Chen, if he agrees, 200 million. They will give him 200 million. All of them old men want to sleep peacefully, don't they? Old man Tai? He replied, "Isn't his son in the Special Assignments Bureau? He knows better than anyone how efficient these for-nothings are. If they could be relied upon, they wouldn't be here today." Then he raised 3 fingers and said, 300 million a month, dear chairman. If he nodded Mr. Chen, he will add 100 million from his own pocket. The protagonist picked up a bill and said that the money would become worthless paper. He's afraid that after a few attacks their money will simply become kindling. With that, he burned the bill in his hands. Chenghong shouted in surprise, "What, Mr. Chen? He's saying that after the second attack, money will be worthless in 2 weeks?" He looked at his phone screen and added, "That can't be right." According to official sources, the coming apocalypse was simply a normal level 1. MC, closing his eyes, asked, Haven't they seen the truth yet? The news only showed normally evolving individuals being sent to repel attacks. He said, since he says so, so what? Then the protagonist walked to the window and asked them to think about why even the Special Tasks Bureau couldn't find a 4th level awakened person. They were trying to close the 5 doors of the apocalypse. This wasn't a real battlefield. The officials couldn't even take care of themselves, so why did they think they could help them? Tai slammed his fist on the table and asked, then, what did he want them to offer? He spread his arms wide and said, he doesn't need money, but special mud produced in Kowloon, special medicine from Baitai, and special supplies of Lantian gold. In 3 days, he wants to see the blueprints of the mountain fortress and the completed defensive structures in a month. Chenggong was surprised. What? Blueprints of the mountain fortress? When the villas there became the line of defense. Defense. MC said the villas around the mountain will become the center, and the natural terrain will make defense easier. Even if the entire world faces an apocalypse, people there can live for years, with air, electricity, ample space, clean water, food, medicine. If they fulfill his request, he will lead their security committee and swear to protect them. Then Tai clapped his hands and said, no wonder he is the strongest man in the country. He is intimidating with his strength, deliberation, and conduct. After some time outside, Tianru said, that was wonderful. He dealt with them all. The protagonist said, everyone wins. Then he added, by the way, his father has shares in this hotel, so they should go have fun. With these words, he handed the card to the protagonist and said that he would go first and would not interfere. The protagonist, taking the card in his hands, turned around and said, darling, there's something he'd like to discuss with her. They can't refuse their brother's kindness, can they? She blushed with embarrassment and agreed with him. After some time, a luxurious executive room, a soundproof space, it reflects all signals, nothing can get in or out. Qian, still embarrassed, said, sir, too fast. He pressed her to his body and told her to become his girlfriend. Then he concentrated energy on the tip of his finger and thought, she's a normal person, so when he controls the energy in her body, he must be extremely careful. After all, he is an extraordinary person with 4,000 or 5,000 units of power. If he's not careful, he will crush her body into cells. The next second, he touched her body. After some time, he covered her with a sheet and thought, very good. Her body has merged with this energy and is slowly changing. There was no poisoning or mutation, so he just needs to wait until tomorrow. Pouring wine into a glass, he thought, he will use the dragon sealing stamp to extract parts of the energy from the absorbed monsters and turn them into seeds that, when transplanted into normal people, will cause them to evolve. Then he sat down on a chair and thought, although it is a little dangerous, he must make Qian evolve too. An hour later, the protagonist, lying on the bed, put his hands behind his head and said, each wave of the apocalypse will be stronger than the last. In this atmosphere, there is no way she will be able to graduate from college. She asked, sir, what should she do besides study? Run away from monsters? He replied that she should look within herself for answers. She wants to become an awakened, right? She exclaimed in surprise. Sir, does he mean that she can evolve too? Of course, that is her dream. He sat down on a chair and looking at her said that he could use the dragon sealing stamp to crystallize some of the monster's power. Once her body absorbed the crystal's energy, she would become as strong as an awakened being. But if she couldn't control this power, not only would she be unable to evolve, but she would also become a monster herself. Did she want to take the risk? She lowered her head and said, he did it. She's not afraid at all. She also wanted to become independent to protect her mother, so she would always fight by his side and never be a burden. He said, very well, she shouldn't move. This was his first time sealing the stamp, so he could make a mistake. She exclaimed that it was her first time too. After a while, the video said that when the dust settled, a superhero would appear on the scene. He was the embodiment of strength itself, the fearless protector of this city. The 4-star evolved Tianlan. With his shining metal body, he will dispel the darkness and destroy all dangers. His every strike is a step towards freedom. His every appearance strikes fear into the heart of evil. And a real man never turns to look at the explosion behind him, because he knows that his real battle is ahead, and they must cheer for him, applaud him. Each of their voices gives him the strength to move forward. They must witness the legend of Tianlan. Van, pointing at the phone screen, said, Chu, this is a short video they filmed with the Shanshui City Special Assignments Bureau. They have several 100,000 subscribers on their app, and this is a 5-star bureau manager of Zhanghai City. He looks cool, right? These viral videos can get millions in a split second, and they're so lightweight. The MC looked at her phone screen and asked, did they use special effects? She replied, not really. Their app can turn on filters with one tap, which will make his movements look even more powerful. Ultimately, such apps are supposed to help evolved humans present themselves so they can earn the public's trust. That's why they've signed contracts with many special mission agencies and evolved humans. Sir, he's a famous person, and I'd especially like to sign a contract with him, as the government has recognized him as the first evolved human of the new generation. They just need him to show off his power, and they'll promote him, and his popularity will skyrocket. He won't have any trouble finding sponsors. You should watch these sponsored videos. Then, she played a video that said that once they eat the superhuman insect, instant noodles. It will be their only hope in the fight against the apocalypse. They should transform from 996 to 007 in just 3 minutes. Their noodles contain a gene enhancer containing 5 ribonucleotides, potassium sorbate, and 58 other high-quality nutritional supplements, so they will remain energetic even under the dual pressures of the apocalypse and capitalism. He must remember, he's not superhuman. He's just a worker, kidnapped by instant noodles. By wearing these amazing dodgeball sneakers, they will avoid spiraling rent costs during the apocalypse. The sneakers contain energy balls, made from recycled materials, allowing them to forget the monotony of everyday life and their boss's KPIs. Please remember, while the soles of their shoes can break from the effort, their dreams cannot. Van said, sir, if he is ready to start a live broadcast on their app, become a popular streamer with millions of fans, they will fulfill any of his demands. He stood up from his chair and said he was not a star. What fans was she talking about? She asked. Does he not know how popular he is now? Why? Even if we go by his delightful handsome face, he will have millions of fans dreaming of becoming his subscribers. As soon as he shows his face in a fan group chat, he can get any girl he wants. In response, he apologized and said he was not interested. Then he went to the window and, turning to the secretary, asked her to take her away. The secretary approached the woman and said, "This way, please." She kept screaming, $100 million a year just for filming commercials. The protagonist continued, "They need to take her away." She screamed, "They need a real hero. Only he can handle this." City M's Superman, the Hulk, can grow to a 5-meter giant ape in an instant, but after transforming, he becomes uncontrollably powerful and impenetrable. He can run hundreds of meters in a second and easily destroys tanks. He is a god to the people of City M. The country's army has a Superman named Shanda. His left hand can become a royal sword. One video with him has been viewed 500 million times. He is called Blade Man, and he is the legendary general of the city. In City F, there is a man with the ability to become flame, and in City D, there is a man who can freeze air. A transformer in City G can stretch like rubber and jump between buildings, and someone who can become invisible. Normal people are naturally afraid and doubtful in the face of the apocalypse. They need a true hero, a hero who can make them feel safe and give them hope. The Hulk of M City, the Shanda of Yi City, they have become symbols of their countries. They need such a symbol too. The protagonist turned slightly and thought it would be nice to increase his scope of control, especially now when he is being criticized online. Then he said that he refuses to stream, but he might agree to filming. She happily asked, "Really?" After a while, he stood on the edge of the building's roof and then swiftly flew down, quadcopters with cameras flying on both sides of him. The video said that he is a light in the darkness, in confusion. He is the embodiment of hope. His sword strikes with precision and grace, and he moves through the air in a deadly dance. A true hero fights not for glory, but for every life on Earth. Chen Chu is the first to evolve in the new generation. Fearless, legendary, benevolent protector. Meanwhile, at the N City Special Assignments Bureau, one of those present watching the video shouted, "Damn, is this some kind of apocalypse game that they, the evolved, are supposed to play?" Zonwen said, "So many special effects, it doesn't even look real anymore." Penlin said, "No, there are no special effects. It just looks so exaggerated." He shouted, "Damn." Wei Ming, like the others, looked at his phone and said, "This Chu must be stronger than 5 stars. He has gone beyond evolution, become awakened. It looks like he will be moving further and further away from them." After some time, a distant temple, a believer, stretching his hands forward, said that they welcome the great Tengu. Tengu flew towards them, followed by Izanami. The old man, bowing, said that they welcome the greats of that ancient animal. One of the believers said, "My lady," that this gigantic beast appeared near their city R in the sea, but it was first discovered in City M. National law stipulates that the resources of such an animal belong to all of humanity, but priority goes to the discoverer. They could only get 30%. Izanami asked, "What national law? If they killed it and took control of all its resources, they would also gain control over their distribution." Meanwhile, the Bathyscaphe carrying the Poseidon assault team from Country M descended to the depths, and several divers left the Bathyscaphe, diving ever lower. One of them, shining a light on the bottom, said, "There are prints here, huge ones." Then he shouted, "Captain, the skull of a monster whale 20 meters long." They saw a huge skull lying on the seabed. Then he looked at the device on his hand and said, "Radiation, 465 sieverts." His partner agreed. That was obviously the source of the radiation. He swam further and asked, "Did they hear it?" His partner asked, "What did they hear?" He said, "Wait, something's wrong with this thing. 885, 1255, 4593 sieverts. It's still rising." Even if they were near local radioactive waste, it wouldn't have been that high. After that, an underwater dragon approached them. The worker, frightened, asked, "What is that?" Sometime later, at the Marine Entertainment Haunted House, Wei Ming, looking over the report, said, "Someone went missing here yesterday. Why didn't he immediately report it to the police?" The worker replied guiltily that he thought the tourist had simply gotten lost. It hadn't been 24 hours, so he sent people to search the area. He hadn't even thought about it. The next second, Wei Ming slammed the folder shut and said, he thinks he was afraid it would harm his business and cause losses. Isn't that right? 3 people disappeared tonight, and 1 more yesterday and the day before. His haunted house swallowed 5 people. This could be a sign of the approaching apocalypse. The Special Assignments Bureau will deal with it. After a while, they entered. Pan Hao, looking at the device, said, "Strange, the sensor had detected poison now. Why did the poisoning start after they entered the haunted house?" Zongwen said, "It looks like they're dealing with a strange monster. Of course, it will collect all the poisoned energy in its area." Hao added, "Was this thematic room on the map the director gave them?" They looked around, and then he looked to the side. The mannequin with a sharp cry fell on him. He stabbed it with his spear, breaking it into several pieces, and screamed in fear. Ning turned around and noticed it was just a prop. What was this acting for? He screamed in fear. Damn it! He thought it was a real ghost. Then their partner looked at the device and said, "The source of the poison is approaching." After that, a small explosion happened behind them. Penguin suddenly raised his shield in front of him and shouted, "Be careful." A monster was aiming at them, trying to attack with its chainsaw. Zongwen said, "A strange 3-star monster with enhanced attacks, defense, and enormous regenerative abilities. Its weakness." Before he could finish speaking, Hao kicked off the ground and, jumping towards the monster, shouted, "He doesn't care that he ate 5 people and became even stronger. He is powerless against its extraordinary weapon." His partner desperately said, "His head." He turned around and shouted, "Huh?" He grabbed his head and shouted, "His weak point is his head." He hit him on the head? Idiot. The next second, Ning shot the monster in the head and then blew the smoke off gun. Twirling it in her hand, she said, disappointingly for a 3-star monster, "Kill it with 1 blow." Pao, holding the spear he was swinging at the monster, said, "It's because his spear restricted its movement. Otherwise, how could she have fired?" His partner said, "Come on, they're a team. Everyone work together, okay?" He then ordered the others to check the perimeter. If the sources of the poisoning are gone, they should return and report to the captain. Penglun said, "Captain." He folded his arms and said that this was a fatal flaw in their team's work. How? Why is he acting without the leader's orders? Does he think he's smarter than Zongwen? He replied that he wasn't, and then the captain added, "He can handle planning and reconnaissance, but he just sits and watches when danger approaches." He pointed a finger at him and added, "He must remember that he is part of the team first and not the leader. If he continues to watch from the sidelines, he will simply sacrifice the lives of his teammates." In response, he adjusted his glasses and said that he was sorry. He should have helped. Then Wei Ming added, "Penglun, who was his shield supposed to protect?" "He must answer," he said in confusion. "His teammates." Then the captain added, "And Ruoya is the only member of his team?" In the end, no one cares about their personal interests. They must protect all their teammates. The 2 of them are so careless that they don't even have a sense of danger, and the rest act thoughtlessly when their teammates are fighting a monster. Where does such courage come from? He folded his arms across his chest and, frowning, said, "This is not a game. One small mistake and they will die. Everyone must be responsible for their teammates so that they all survive. Do they understand?" They answered positively, and then he added, he finished cursing. Their second mission could have gone even worse. With such power, they could handle a simple 4-star monster. And now he would reveal a military secret that must not be revealed to anyone. He took out a cigarette, took a drag, and added that Doomsday Base M had been destroyed by a monarch-level demon with a power greater than 10 stars. The authorities immediately raised the difficulty rating to 11, defining it as Armageddon. Zongwen was surprised. Armageddon? Penglun said he had never heard of such a thing. The captain blew smoke from his mouth and said that City M had lost over 17,000 evolved beings overnight. The government had been forced to use nuclear weapons, and even that had difficulty dealing with monsters. As far as he knew, no monster corpses were found in the rubble. The authorities only wrote that they apparently retreated. Zongwen asked, had they used nuclear bombs and still failed to kill them? The captain replied, the 17 doors of the apocalypse had been affected to varying degrees. Given the changes in waves in space and time, the apocalypse in 10 days or more will be much worse than they expected. They will have a hard time facing stronger monsters. Roya put her hand to her chin and asked, Captain, how can they become stronger? Will there be special training? He took out a crystal and said, time is running out. The Special Assignments Bureau has distributed spiritual crystals. They should know what this means. Hao shouted joyfully. This can awaken hidden potential and allow abilities to develop even faster. The captain said, they have been selected to consume these crystals to become stronger. Everyone on this team must obtain the final 4 stars in the next 10 days for the future of humanity. Zongwen clenched his fist and assured, Captain, they will not fail. Hao added, for the future of humanity. Meanwhile, MC sat on the edge of a cliff and looked at his stats, which stated his name, Chen Shu, level minor deity, extraordinary, strength 9,935, spirit 1,298, abilities, weapon superiority, sense superiority, sovereign superiority, talents, flying fist, slash, kick, moonstep, passive talents, mighty thunder, scarlet flame, weapon, heavenly sword, demon king armor, clone, ancient iguana, 3rd level evolution. He thought, given that ancient iguanas hunt for food in the fish farms of the Northern Sea, he should be able to evolve 4 times in a few days. After that, he would only care about Qianqian's evolutionary progress. Meanwhile, Song Situ Qianqian, she tearfully asked, where is she? The creature opened its mouth wide. She fearfully told it not to come near. She screamed that it must not come near. After that, she woke up on the bed, covering her naked body with a sheet. The protagonist sat in a chair nearby and asked how she felt. She looked at him and said, "Sir, what is he talking about?" He abruptly threw a mug at her. It shattered on her hand, and then he came closer and asked what it was like to be evolved. She looked at her hand in surprise and asked, "What happened?" He said, "Evolved with a single star capable of striking with a force of 500 kilograms and moving at a speed of 15 kilometers per second." He congratulated her. The evolution worked. She said she felt stronger. Had she really evolved? Becoming evolved is the dream of millions of people around the world. Low-level evolution inducers have become in demand on the black market. The price has skyrocketed to $50 million. However, using a low-level evolution inducer is associated with enormous risks. The slightest mistake can turn the user into a mutant. Many ordinary people dreamed of evolving and were shackled. In special cases, family members stood by with pistols until the evolution was complete. Once the body destabilized, an unspeakably terrible death ensued. Despite this, countless people eagerly embraced the drastic mutations, embarking on the path of evolution without hesitation. As the end of the world approached, the era of evolution had arrived. Sometime later, Ocho Island, the open sea. Izanami, hovering in the air, said, "Ibis, he must open the way." He agreed with her, then concentrated a barrier around himself and flew forward. The others followed, sinking to the bottom. Benton, behind Izanami, screamed, "The beast has released the aura of a king. You must not look him in the eye." Inari adjusted her mask and said, "Even in his youthful form, he has reached the 9th level of a magical beast, a terrifying king-class creature." Susanoo asked, "Is she mistaken?" She channeled energy forward and said that this beast was slightly stronger than the king-level creature that attacked their base last month. Her instincts couldn't be wrong. Izanami, striking a pose, said, "Such a powerful primordial beast will definitely give them a lot of essence." Benton, "She must use her illusion magic to take control of it. Rest of us must squeeze out every last drop of its essence and destroy its body, leaving no trace." The others shouted, "Praise the gods." The next second, the monster screamed loudly. Benton, concentrating, directed waves of energy directly at the monster. Izanami put her hand to her side and said, "They must watch. The power of the beast. How beautiful it is. They must absorb it, gather it, become it. Darkness will devour everything. Chaos will rule all. They must pray to the darkness, pray to chaos, pray to eternal existence. The interweaving of darkness and light, the cycle of life and death, all will become nothing. They must become immortal, must stand as gods. They must pray to the darkness, pray to chaos, pray to eternal existence." Their desire for transcendental power never wavered. As the flames of destruction tore through the heavens, a mushroom cloud blossomed, a symbol of an end shrouded in death. The shockwaves shook the earth like divine punishment. Civilization and order crumbled to splinters. The world became primordial chaos. 30 days and nights passed as the ashes settled. Once towering mountains became deserts, rivers became dead lakes. In the cracks of the blasted earth, survivors stared in horror. The remains of colossal, mountain-sized beasts, glowing with a strange metallic sheen, remained in battle poses even after destruction, as if quietly telling the story of a lost era. In their crystallized bone marrow, they found a substance that sparkled like stars. When light fell on it, the substance pulsed as if alive, refracting the colors of the visible spectrum. After 700 days and nights of study, they finally unlocked its secrets. It could reconstruct the molecular structure of living things, allowing carbon to break free from the shackles of evolution. A scientist, looking at it with tears in his eyes, declared, "This is the fire of Prometheus, the forbidden fruit of wisdom." The Prime Minister held up a flask of glowing blue material at a press conference and declared, "Today they must crown themselves gods. They will call this substance divine in origin." But fate soon revealed its horrific face. The first volunteers turned into crystalline statues in the sacred blue light. Their final expressions were forever frozen in a mixture of agony and ecstasy. Their fiery flesh was like tissue paper, struggling to survive the flames. Finally, they realized that this was not the power of creation. Human bodies became ordinary clay. They couldn't be a sacred gift from the gods. But fate always had a plan. After the apocalypse, monsters began to roam the earth. Unexpectedly, some humans and survivors who came into contact with a divine substance were able to evolve by collecting the monster's rot. Only then did they realize that mythology hadn't abandoned them, it had accelerated them. In this era, they are the successors of myth, evolving, growing stronger, until one day they reach the world of the gods. Izanami, spreading her arms, said, "They must become gods. They must pray to the gods." At that moment, the MC who had climbed onto the monster said, "They must pray to the gods." She was surprised. "Who's here?" He pointed at himself and told them to pray to him. His name is Chen Chu. Izanami anxiously called out to Inari and told her to analyze the information immediately. In response, she said, "Yes, great one." Then she moved forward and, placing a mask on her face, used the divine gaze of Kojo. At that moment, the protagonist lowered himself down and asked, "Sensory abilities like observation haki? No, that's much lower in power." The next second, Inari's face mask cracked, releasing magical impulses. Then she fell down. Izanami, turning around, asked, "Where's the intelligence?" Inari, rising from the cracked ground, said, "The enemy has the same mystical ability of foresight." Her divine gaze was reflected. Izanami was surprised. "What?" Then Susanoo approached her and, stretching the joint of his hand, called out to her, "Great. What difference does it make what kind of magic? he will destroy it with one blow. Then he swung his fist and shouted, "He must die, idiot!" He rushed forward, but at that moment, MC appeared to the side and asked in bewilderment, "Dare he attack first?" Then he turned around, but the protagonist sharply kicked him, sending him floating. Then Daikokuten concentrated energy in his hand and, directing it at his comrade, shouted, "Repel." Susanoo stopped a few centimeters from the sharp growths of the rock. The protagonist asked, "Gravity control?" "Very beautiful," Susanoo shouted. "He must stay away, Daikokuten." He approached and then, pointing his hand at the protagonist, said, "It's his turn to feel pierced." Then he landed, directing energy to the bottom. The ground beneath the protagonist's feet became covered in cracks. Then a powerful explosion occurred. He screamed in surprise. Even gravity doesn't affect him. Then the protagonist, clenching his fists, rose higher, energy raging in different directions around his body. Inari screamed in surprise. He's not using absolutely all of his power. Daikokuten, concentrating energy in his hands, clenched his teeth and wondered, "What the hell? He can suppress divine power?" Susanoo clenched his fists and, indignant, asked, "Dare he insult him? So he should demand repayment in blood." He then charged, using Nura's iron cannon. MC, looking at him, thought, "A physical technique?" He then grabbed the attacker's fist, stopping him. At that moment, the cliff behind him shattered into smaller rocks. Susanoo screamed, "This monster!" He then flew further away, and the protagonist, letting go of his hand, threw him to the ground, then concentrated energy in his hand and charged. Susanoo thought in fear, "He's going to die. He won't be able to repel this attack." At that moment, Daikokuten directed his energy at his comrade, knocking him aside. Meanwhile, MC used a burst of scarlet blood flame. Then Izanami said, "Gods of Takamagahara, they must join forces to defeat the enemy." The others agreed. "Yes, great one." Ibis began concentrating energy in his hands, creating stone hands emerging from the ground and heading toward the protagonist. He laughed lightly, then directed his hands toward the ground again, using the shackles of the god, stone iron shackles. The stone growths moved toward the protagonist, trapping him in a ball. Ibis, looking at this, said, "Stones strengthened by divine power are even stronger than iron. Even if he has extraordinary abilities, he will suffocate in his stone prison once the air runs out." Inari pointed her hand forward and said in surprise, "He melts stones with incredible heat." Afterwards, the protagonist's hand emerged from the molten portion of the stone ball, and the hole grew larger. Susanoo told him to take a look. His stone shell was as soft as gooey natto. "Is he even useful?" Ibis placed his hand on the ground and shouted, "One layer isn't enough, I need to add another." Then he used the god's shackles, silver rods. Stone protrusions emerged from the ground again, and shouted, "2 layers aren't enough, add a third." He used the god's shackles, heavenly golden palace. More stone pillars emerged from the ground, trying to cover the protagonist. Ibis knelt down and said, "That triple bind has used up all his divine powers." Susanoo turned around and said he didn't mean he should use his strongest ability, he was just joking. Kagatsuchi then said, "No one survived Ibis's heavenly golden palace. The battle was already over." Susanoo looked at him and said, "He thought he was some bigwig back then. Didn't the Takamagahara pantheon destroy him?" Izanami said, "The obstacle is removed now. He must kill this lizard and suck out all its essence." They looked at the creature, and then she asked, "What is this? What does her divine infusion of the spirit of Inari see?" She looked at the stone growths and said, "That's a seal. She can't handle him. He can overcome metal structures. Ibis's triple seal has no effect against him." At that moment, flashes of energy appeared in the stone growths, and the protagonist said that if she wishes to hunt the young ancient monster, she must first step over his corpse. Otherwise, they shouldn't blame him for trampling their bodies. Ibis, looking at the crumbling stone growths, shouted, "He's definitely sealed him." The MC, having destroyed the rocks around him, said, "Come on, he will take their bodies, one by one. He will grind them into dust." Kagatsuchi concentrated fiery energy around himself and said, "He has killed their comrades. Enough chatter. Anyone who tries to block his path to deity will meet only death. And his flame is different from his sorcery. His divine power is capable of creating karmic flames that burn continuously for 7 days." The protagonist, having concentrated energy around himself, shouted, "His lukewarm flames are more suitable for heating tea." His opponent then created an arrow of karmic annihilation of the lower world, and directing it forward, shouted, "He must die." The protagonist sighed, creating a smokescreen. Kagatsuchi, looking at this, asked in surprise, "Huh?" Susanoo shouted, "Enough chatter." He attacks from below, and they press from above. Daikokuten, he must support from the air. He shouted that he understood, and they headed to attack. Izanami, gritting her teeth, said she couldn't believe he could fight 3 of them at once. Benton, channeling energy forward, asked who else would help her defeat this demon. Susanoo, charging, used Raging Raksha Cannon, but the protagonist easily parried his attack, sending him plummeting to the bottom. The protagonist used Yomi's Myriad Flame Annihilation. Inari, looking at her comrade, shouted, "Be careful, that's the mark that seals the dragon." He looked down, seeing a magical symbol. Golden chains erupted from the magic circles, binding Daikokuten and knocking him to the ground. Inari looked on with a worried expression and said that this was magic of a higher order than Ebisu's seal. Izanami called out to Benton and asked what she was going to do. She said with a serious expression that it was time for them to psychologically unite and act. Her mouth opened unnaturally wide, and she said that even if the devil's physical body was strong, he would not be able to repel her psychic attack. This voice came from Yomi. He must hear it and fall. This is Yomi Kotodama. Chenshu looked at her and released Kagatsuchi, whom he was holding with one hand. She said that by defiling Yomi in this body, she would bind his soul. He must listen. She is the law of death, like a mother's embrace, like a child's grip. He must fall and immerse himself in the path of Yomi, on which even gods fall. He ran back to her and said that her Kotodama was still active. The devil could no longer move. He had to plunge into the world of a nightmare. At the same time, he saw her very large, and she said that the power of the real world did not matter here. This was her mental world. It could be broken as easily as moving a hand. His physical magic was useless, and he could not use witchcraft. This was a solitary arena for spiritual combat. He began coughing up blood, and she asked with a haughty smirk, "Does it hurt?" In her world, the feeling of pain was amplified hundreds of times. The best thing here was that he would not lose consciousness. In fact, he would think even more clearly. Every nerve would transmit this agony. She attacked him from different sides and he asked, since this was the mental world, then these imaginary wounds could not be fatal, right? She said that, however, this was enough to make him beg for death. Her Kotodama would bring him to his knees and make him beg for death. For example, right now he feels like killing himself here is the only way out. He said with a smirk that he means that if he doesn't even feel pain, then her Kotodama is just an intrusive noise. She was shocked by what she heard and said that it was completely impossible. She dealt another blow and asked, "Does he really not feel any pain?" He calmly looked at her and said that if this feeling of pain is taken as 100 points, then the pain from the boiling of his blood during the activation of the bloody explosion of crimson flames can be equated to 1,000,000. Lightning began to emanate from his eye, and he said that her imagination is definitely interesting. From now on, her soul will remember one thing: she lost. Because of this, her world collapsed. She fell to the ground and said only that she lost. In the real world, he ordered her to get up, and she immediately headed towards him. Izanami asked with a shocked look, did he make her his puppet? Did her Kotodama reflect on her? Benton stopped and said that they needed to leave. This place was ominous. With a displeased expression, she said that this was betrayal. She was trained to kill her own master. The protagonist said that today's battle was over. They could remove her from here. His control over the victor's aura would wear off in 3 days. In the future, they might not even think about his scabbard. She raised her hand and asked, does he think it will end like this? Those who dare challenge a deity will pay with their blood. She called her name and said that now she could die. Tengu flew very quickly next to her and killed her with one blow of his wing. He watched what was happening and said that he had never seen someone so cruel, someone who would kill themselves. Inari, looking worried, asked the great ruler why she did this. She was definitely one of them. Izanami, with a calm expression, said that useless people have no right to become gods. The shell of a loser is not worthy of the gift sent by the gods. The interweaving of light and darkness, the cycle of life and everything will return to oblivion. They must become immortal gods. The interweaving of light and darkness, the cycle of life and death, this is Takamagahara's dance of demise. MC used a bloody explosion of crimson flames with a small smile. His body changed, and she, with a shocked expression, said that something was wrong. His original power and the lizard behind him were so similar. What actually connects him to this? He ran towards them very quickly with a serious expression. She was shocked by this. Tengu flew up to her and protected her from his very strong attack with his wings. He continued to deal strong blows, but he stood his ground and threw him back with a flap of his wings. One of them used the skill Yata no Kagami, Shinsho Yokarin. She created several sources of light, forcing him to cover his face with his hand. Izanami watched this with a calm expression and said that this skill is capable of piercing the shields of demonic beasts. It is like microwaves, destroying him from the inside. He took out his sword, which he stabbed into the ground, and created a barrier to protect himself from this light. A guy emerged from his shadow behind him and used the skill Kajikui Shungoku Satsu. He stabbed him in the back with his sword, but he anticipated it and created the armor of a demon emperor. With a wave of his hand, he released flames which he attacked him with, but the guy disappeared. She watched this with a smirk and said that it was useless. Where there is light, there is shadow. And as long as shadows exist, Tsukuyomi is immortal. He emerged from his shadow again, used 2 skills in a row, and attacked with his sword. However, his attacks were unable to pierce his armor, and he stood calmly in place. He hid in the shadows and said that he had amazing defensive power. Tengu took advantage of his distraction, flew towards him very quickly and struck him with his wing. With this blow, he was able to break a small part of his armor. Izanami hovered in the air and said that his attacks could destroy the defense of enemies. Even the strongest shield would be destroyed with a single breath. Chenchu smiled and said that it was a good try. He swung his sword with the power of his mind, but Tengu managed to dodge this attack. He caught his sword and jumped up to dodge the Jigoku Yaga skill. Tsukuyomi continued to use his skills, trying to attack him, but he easily dodged and reflected these blows. He broke his sword with one blow and left a cut on his body. His body turned to dust, and he asked, "So it is impossible to kill him as long as the shadow exists, right? Then he will simply evaporate the shadows along with him." He released a bright flash of light, causing his opponent to be thrown out of the shadows and onto the surface. He was severely injured and fell to the ground. He didn't have time to do anything because he jumped towards him and stabbed his sword into his body with terrifying force. He killed him with that blow, after which he turned around and asked, who else would dare to oppose him? The girl was very worried about this and loudly called out to her brother, but Tengu raised his hand to stop her. Izanami, with a displeased expression, loudly asked, "What are they all standing there for? They should take them and attack together." The rest of her team was very scared and no longer wanted to fight. The girl became very angry, continued to cry over her brother's death and asked, how dare they sell her labor? These are freaks who seek death. Why sacrifice like that? Izanami said that she allowed all her younger brothers to be killed in order to obtain the origin essence. They are future gods and must kill this demon. She continued to cry and said that they would get enough essence to become even stronger. However, she did not want to become stronger. She grabbed her by the neck, lifted her off the ground and told this coward that she just wanted to be a normal person, to be a good older sister. She betrayed the oath of the Yaki clan. This is a grave crime. They are the heirs of the myth. They are constantly evolving and constantly becoming stronger, until one day they will be able to touch the divine world. He insulted her with a serious expression, to which she called Tengu and said that he must kill this traitor. Her heart wavered. She was unworthy of the divine ship. He did not do it, turned away from her. She looked at the others, but they could not do anything because of fear. The protagonist with a smirk thrust his sword into the ground, leaned on it and said that he had no intention of fighting them to the death. They should abandon their enmity and can leave here. Izanami was very angry about this and asked, he wants her to give up. She killed the girl with her own hand, began to transform, and loudly declared that it was absolutely impossible. One of the snakes on her head began to eat her, and she said that every drop of origin essence would be her food. All their powers would belong to her. She began to eat the rest of her squad members who were standing nearby. Inari looked at this with a worried look and said that she was absorbing the abilities of their Yaki clan, so she sees them only as. She didn't have time to finish because she agreed and said that their clan was ridiculous. They were nothing more than reservoirs for cultivating the essence of origin. Here, only she is worthy of becoming a god. MC was still watching from the sidelines and said that this was a rather unexpected plot twist. Are they having problems within their own ranks? Suzuno said that, although he can't stand him, this is a personal matter for the Yaki clan. If he doesn't want to die, he should run away from here. He threw a large stone at her and loudly said that this is a battle for survival. One of her snakes destroyed the stone and she asked, so he is another dog who will try to kill his own master? Daikokuten manipulated the stone's gravity and, with a serious expression, said that they were orphans, test subjects, survivors of disasters. Then Izanami gave them stones and said that by becoming gods, they can escape the suffering of mortals. Some of them suffered after using these stones, and she, with an evil grin, said that from this day on, they are the Yaki clan. Currently, he said with a dissatisfied expression that from the very beginning they gathered and became the Yaki clan for one reason, to live on. He tried to attack her with the stones he controlled, but she released a powerful burst of energy. She ran up to him very quickly from behind and said that she had already received the powers of light and darkness. He may not even think he was capable of defeating her. She used her skill to create snakes from the shadows, which immobilized him. He resisted with all his might and said that he would never submit. She squeezed his body with shadow snakes and killed him. He disintegrated into many stones and she began to laugh loudly. Having absorbed his abilities, she waved her hand and pulled the rest of the clan members towards her. As they flew towards her, she said that they should give up their powers. Chenshu very quickly ran up to Inari and grabbed her leg, which greatly surprised her. Kagatsuchi enveloped his body in flames and loudly declared he would fight her to the death. Suzuno channeled energy into his fist before attacking, loudly declaring that even if they both died, he would not let her win. Izanami merely grinned and sent two large snakes flying toward them. She killed one of them with this attack, but Kagatsuchi, while flying, loudly declared that even if he couldn't fight back, he would pull her along with him. He flew into the snake's mouth and used Yomi's burn skill, a flash of fury in the sun. The snake began to stretch, and a powerful explosion destroyed the monster. All that remained of him was a crystal, and she said that he chose to destroy himself rather than let her consume him. The snake brought her this stone, and she grinned and said he was too naive. His body is merely a vessel for the essence of origin. Even if he kills himself, the essence of origin within him will not dissipate. The snake absorbed the stone and took its powers. She said with a sly smile that she had already absorbed 7. Inari took out her dagger and said that killing herself was useless. There was no way out. The Tengu looked at this with a serious expression, and Izanami said that only the two of them remained. He, with a serious expression, folded his hands in a seal and disappeared. She asked with a smirk, did he run away? This is a smart, cowardly, and realistic choice. Inari looked at the protagonist with a very worried expression and said that with his power, he would definitely be able to destroy the crystal with the essence of origin inside her. She begs him to kill her and then destroy the crystal. She does not want to become part of her powers. Only he can do this. He looked at her with a calm expression and silently. She flew closer with a wide smile and asked, does she want to use the power of a demon to destroy the essence of origin? She betrayed the will of the Takamagahara gods. She is also a traitor. She started to panic even more and said loudly that he had to kill her faster and destroy the crystal inside her. Otherwise, it would be too late. She laughed, looking at this, and asked, does she want to die? She will squeeze the origin essence from this demon and the lizard at the same time. After that, she will ascend to the gods. He took the dagger from her and with a calm expression said that she did not need to die. Izanami pointed her snakes at them and said loudly that the two of them would sacrifice themselves together to the new god. He swung and threw the dagger very hard at her head. He looked at her with a serious expression and said that he had decided not to interfere in their quarrel, but she tried to drag his lizard sword into it, so he changed his mind. She pulled the dagger out of her head and said that this power was not enough to kill her. He ran up to her very quickly, struck her with a very strong fist, and said that today would be her end. His hand was glowing with energy, and he asked how she felt about that blow. When the dust cleared, he saw that she was standing on her feet and said that it didn't even tickle her. He looked at this and used the skill, lightning tempers his body, fire forges bones. A bloody explosion of scarlet flame. Powerful lightning energy began to emanate from his body and he flew towards her very quickly. He delivered a very strong blow to the ground, but she managed to jump aside. He looked at her with a smirk and said that if she still had tricks left, then she should show them. She released snakes in the shadows and used the skill, Shadow Absorption, Dark Yamada. He snapped his fingers and created energy which destroyed these snakes. She was shocked by this and asked, didn't it really work? MC, with a calm expression, began to slowly walk towards her, while lightning from his body struck the ground. Izanami looked at him and thought that even while walking, the pressure of this monster was more terrifying than that of the gods. She assumed a fighting stance and said that copper would corrode his flesh, silver would seal his soul, and gold would destroy existence. A large green snake burst from the ground next to him, which he destroyed with his lightning. A blue snake burst forth nearby, but he grabbed it with his hand of energy and used the skill Mirage in charred coals. At the same moment, another snake burst from the ground under his feet, its mouth wide open. He watched calmly, and the snake was able to swallow him. She watched from the side and said that it seemed he had gone silent. He remained inside with a calm expression and thought he was speechless. With one attack, he was able to cut off the snake's head and climbed out. He ran up to her very quickly from behind and said that even after absorbing her comrades, she was still weak. He struck her with an incredibly fast blow, aimed at her neck, and she didn't even have time to process what had happened. She refused to believe it and said that she was a goddess and shouldn't die. She clutched at her wound and said that she must rise above all and ascend to the divine palace. She must look down on all living things from the heights of a deity. Chenshu looked at her and, with a calm expression, said that she had enough of crimes. She continued to refuse to believe what was happening, but still fell to the ground. The cave they were in began to collapse, and a frightened Inari hid behind a rock and said that she couldn't. He approached her, extended his hand, and said that she was no longer there. He took her in his arms, after which they very quickly floated out together. They jumped onto the nearest ship, and a surprised crew member asked where those two had come from. He didn't recognize their language, and wondered if they were foreigners. He pointed at Inari, then to the shore, and politely asked if they could take her ashore. The two foreigners threw up their hands and looked at each other blankly. Looking at their reactions, he thought he didn't know if they understood anything or not. He carried her to the bed and thought that humanity was a species extremely prone to internal strife and selfishness. If you look back at history, the number of people killed by their own kind is tens of thousands of times greater than the number of victims of disasters and monsters. Most people, having gained strength, do not think about protecting the weak or restoring justice, but draw their swords against those even weaker. He does not deny that in this world there will always be good people ready to step forward. He left the ship and thought, however, that human nature is too stubborn and vile, so he does not hesitate to assume the worst of anyone who might threaten his survival. He is not good, he does not weep for souls, he is not evil, and does not feed on bitter hatred. He is not chaos, and does not stir up the ashes of all living things. He is not order and does not bind the roots of the universe. He is not light and does not illuminate the path of the lost. He is not darkness and does not conceal the prying fire. He is not truth and does not forge eternal form. He is not illusion and does not leave a fading trace. He is the blade hanging between good and evil, and he alone will cut through the twilight of chaos. Meanwhile, in the special control, Weiming stopped the video with the protagonist and said that this was a fragment of the battle footage. According to the latest data, it was confirmed that his strength has exceeded the 5-star level. Everyone was surprised by this, and he said that a pillar of heavy concrete 100 centimeters in diameter, was shattered by a single blow. According to preliminary estimates, the force of the impact exceeded 1,500 tons. Pan Hao was very surprised by what he heard and loudly asked if he was even human. Penglin said with a dissatisfied expression that his limit was 1.5 tons. Does that mean his strength is 1,000 times greater than his? Zhongwen said that according to the world ranking of evolutionists, the benchmark for striking power for a 5-star level is 100 tons. However, his 1,500 tons is already a 6th or 7th star level, right? Weiming said that once an evolutionist surpasses the 5-star level, physical strength ceases to be the criterion for strength, replaced by supernatural power. Pan Hao asked what this supernatural power was and whether he would have it. He said with a serious expression that he had heard that each country has its own evolution system, and everyone's ultimate goal is to awaken supernatural abilities, such as gravity control, fire raging throughout the body, telepathy, and so on. People are ready to do anything to reach a level above 5 stars as quickly as possible. At least as far as he knows, the neighboring state R is developing technologies for the accelerated evolution of their evolved ones. They, weaklings, haven't even reached 4 stars, and they're already dreaming of something sublime. They all raised their hands and agreed with him. After some time, MC was lying on the couch, looking at the crystal in his hand, and said that he had heard that it was supposedly a source, but in fact, it was just slightly more advanced crystals of spiritual energy. As Anami couldn't even imagine that this thing would end up in his hands. The system notified that the body stats had increased. He looked at his stats and asked, is he stuck at 9,999 points? The constitution points have reached the limit. Is it really time to start the 4th stage of evolution? Xiaoxi was sitting next to him, called his name and asked if he was okay. He sat up and said with a small smile that everything was fine. She said that she was hungry. He asked if he had some energy crystals. Did she want them? She agreed, and he began feeding her the crystals, and said she should eat more. When she grew stronger and could restore the gate, they would go fight the monsters together. Sometime later, an alarm sounded in the building, and people loudly announced, "Attention, the global pollution level has sharply exceeded its limit." He repeated, all nearby bases are to immediately activate the 1st-level defense protocol. The polluted energy has exceeded the critical limit by 20 times. Energy fluctuations continue to intensify. All personnel are to immediately go on high alert. Attention, evolved beings below rank 4 are prohibited from leaving the purification field. Contact with the pollution zone will cause irreversible mutation. All fighters must take up positions. According to preliminary data, the first wave of pollution will reach the defense line in 72 hours. Chen Chu stood up abruptly in his villa and thought he had a feeling as if some kind of large-scale disaster was approaching. Jian rode up to his house on a motorcycle and took off her helmet. He came out to her and said that he begs her not to wake people up this morning. He couldn't remember her name, and she repeated it with a displeased expression and said that his food had arrived. He asked with a small smile, he hasn't ordered anything at all for the last 2 days, so where is the delivery from? She opened the box and said that he hadn't ordered food for 2 days in a row. She was worried that he would die of hunger in his room. She took out 2 packages and said that on the left was his favorite, stewed chicken in sauce 3 times a week, and on the right, malaro, which he likes to order at night, spicy and with extra flavor. He looked at her with a confused look and asked, "Have you lost your mind and are stalking him?" She said that she did say that she was going to look after him. She gave him the packages and said that that's why she watches every moment of his life. After that, she started to leave and said that he should eat while it's warm. She winked at him and said it was time for her to leave. She left and he wondered what it mattered to her whether he ordered food or not. At that moment, his stomach growled and he thought that this woman had clearly set everything up. Xiaoxi flew to him and called his name, and he asked what happened. She said that she felt a new door and they were ready. He said with a smile that as soon as they had breakfast, they would leave right away. Sometime later, in an abandoned unfinished tower, they came to the portal together, and she said that they were there. He should open it more carefully. He put on his armor, and the system notified that a hint, the Emperor Demon Armor, increases resistance to contaminated energy. He called her and said that they could begin. A stream of dark energy was directed at him from the portal, and he said that the level of contamination was too high. Is it not holding back even with the enhanced protection of the armor? He went inside and saw nothing, and thought that the color of perception should bloom. He began to see and noticed a large stone flying at him. He cut this stone with his sword, and asked, "Will he be attacked immediately after meeting? That's what he needs." He noticed a monster standing nearby and thought it was a hint. A 4-armed primate demon had been detected. This monster very quickly jumped towards the protagonist and dealt a very strong blow with its paw. He blocked this blow, and the system notified that the degree of infection was increasing. He thought with a smile, "I wonder if he pushes his strength to the limit, will he be able to destroy this monster with one blow?" He began to channel the energy in his body, and the demon immediately noticed it. He dealt a strong blow with his sword and threw the monster away. He immediately jumped towards it, swung his fist, and thought that a quick victory was what he needed. He dealt a very powerful blow, killed him, and said that the force of this blow was approaching 500 tons. Even the strongest body could not withstand such an explosion. He picked up the stone left after the demon's death and thought that the energy concentration was extremely high. It was very similar to the Izanami source crystal, but this one was much smaller. He destroyed the crystal with one hand, and the system announced that 1,000 units of evolutionary energy had been received. He said that it was a pure energy crystal. It was worth absorbing one and immediately receiving evolutionary energy. For the next evolution, another 10,000 units were needed. Unexpectedly, it seemed that he had found a way to quickly evolve. After some time, he came out onto a high cliff, from where he could see many islands and a huge tree. He looked at this and asked how many such crystals were hidden in this wild and untouched jungle. He walked along the path and with a self-confident look thought that his gift of observation was revealed to the maximum. He saw large insects carrying crystals, and the system reported a magical ant, a 3rd-rank natural monster. He thought the energy of the magical crystal in his body was much more turbid than that of a magical monkey. Could it be that they were feeding on these primeval crystals? After some time, he saw large flying insects, and the system reported a magical mosquito, a 4th-rank natural monster. He looked at this and thought that the magical mosquito had noticed its target and that it was not him. The mosquitoes began to kill the ants and suck out their energy. MC was very surprised by this and wondered if the monster had evolved right there. This 4th-rank specimen, having absorbed the magical ant, immediately turned into an elite 5th-rank monster. A magical monkey quickly jumped up to these mosquitoes and began to eat these monsters. The system reported that it was a magical monkey, a 6th-rank natural monster. He looked at this and thought that each hunt, each evolution, step by step, purifies this raw energy. When such monsters reach the end of their life's journey, they all, as one, return to the foot of the tree of life, to the sanctuary entwined with its roots, and there they die. Their bodies slowly disintegrate, and the magical essence forged throughout their lives returns to the roots of the great tree, becoming nourishment for its eternal existence. The tree of life remains silent, only gently touching the rest of these faithful creatures with its roots. New eggs of magical ants are already maturing in the anthill. Soon a new generation of crystal carriers will hatch, to continue this endless cycle of energy, born into slavery, dying as food, and so on without end. Only this perfect cycle of energy will come to an end today. Everything they forged their entire lives will soon be his. He ran forward very quickly and killed several monsters that stood before him. Their bodies fell to the ground and began to crumble, leaving behind crystals. He raised his hand and began to attract all the crystals around him, and the system announced that 8 low-level crimson crystals were equal to 1 medium crimson crystal. 8 medium crimson crystals were equal to 1 supreme crimson crystal. He activated fusion, and the system announced that the power had evolved into a crystal. A supreme crimson magic crystal not only provides a huge amount of evolved energy, but also has a 1% probability of triggering random area super evolution during evolution. If successful, the resulting force will be many times greater than a normal breakthrough. Chen Chu read this and asked, "Is random super evolution also possible?" He thought that 1% probability was too small. If this attempt at evolution does not lead to super evolution, then this extremely rare supreme crimson crystal will simply be wasted. He said that there must be something higher than the crimson magic crystal. He saw the monsters surrounding him and said with a grin that he would do it again. He ran towards the monsters and began killing them with his sword. He looked around and said that he was almost done. He collected the crystals, and the system notified that with 8 superior scarlet crystals, they could be fused into a medium blue crystal. He read this and activated the fusion. He received a medium blue magic crystal, and the system notified that the probability of super evolution had increased to 10%. He put the crystal away, and with a serious expression, thought that this was not enough, he needed the full 100%. After some time, he collected more crystals and asked what the result would be if he fused the crystals of all the magic crystals in this forest. He activated the fusion and the system notified that the successful creation of a superior blue magic crystal. A superior blue magic crystal allows its owner to activate super evolution with a 100% chance. He said with a smile that after killing all the monsters in this forest of death, he finally got it. If he used it, he was guaranteed to receive a random super evolution effect. He was about to use it, but at that moment, a huge monster flew towards him. The protagonist managed to jump aside and thought that he had never encountered such a powerful pressure of the royal will. He looked at it with a serious expression and thought that the aura area was capable of directly distorting the environment itself. This was no longer possible for ordinary monsters. He exterminated the entire forest to create this crystal, but he wants to profit from what he created. The system notified that this was a 9th rank magical creature, the Lord of Chimeras. He smiled and wondered if letting him absorb the crystal himself would be even better. Since these were the rules of the Forest of Death, then it would allow him to complete the final tempering for him. The monster absorbed his crystal, and he said with a grin that he would ensure the super evolution probability exceeded 100%. The system announced that the Chimera's evolution to its supreme form, a 10th rank monster, had been completed. He stood still and said that first he would swallow it, and then give him 100 times more.